Valor, service, and pride. 3 words that embody the spirit of Virginia State Police. Dedication is required, professionalism is a must, and courage is a given. It is what each employee, civilian and sworn, brings to the job. As we celebrate 75 years of service to the Commonwealth, we must first remember where we came from, the pioneers who paved the way and helped make who we are today. The year 1932. Virginia State Police was part of the Division of Motor Vehicles. Inspectors enforced traffic laws and motor vehicle registrations, but that same year, legislators expanded their duties to include enforcing criminal codes. It created an enforcement group with the power to arrest anywhere in the state. It was also the year the first extended training academy for inspectors began in Virginia Beach. At the same time, inspectors began to be called troopers, and the public was introduced to the great white fleet of motorcycles and roadsters. But it was also desperate times. The U.S. was in the grips of the Great Depression, and more than 13 million Americans were unemployed.
Times were tight. This was a depression.
4 years later, the competition for employment still fierce.
The 1936 legislature increased the state police force by 50 men.
A young Meredith Urich secured a slot and began working the required schedule of 12 hours, 6 days a week.
They paid $1,200 a year. We got $100 a month.
The radio system was in its infancy, so most inspectors, like Urich, drove a 1936 Chevrolet Coupe without any form of communication with headquarters, instead relying on local establishments to signal a call.
You were supposed to get acquainted with stores, service stations, things, prominent places around your town, and alert the operators of those people to be on the lookout for you.
By 1938, slacks replaced the standard uniform of breeches and boots, and the official title of state trooper was adopted. A year later, state police moved from downtown to a 7-room farmhouse on Route 60. It served as the administration building until a 2-story brick building was complete at a cost of $133,000.
Attention all units, special attention units, 1st and 3rd Division.
By the early 40s, state police had radio service to its patrol cars, and the teletypewriter helped with communications statewide. 5th Division formed, and the state police roster totaled 217 men. Even in those early days, troopers provided dignitary protection for presidents. The state police formed an investigative unit, and before the U.S. involvement in World War II, basic training for troopers increased.
In training school, we didn't get any salary. We were there several weeks or more. They decided to pay us $40 every 2 weeks.
5 weeks of it, you stayed at the school. You didn't leave for anything except on Wednesday night. They had a bus at the school, and it took half of us over to Richmond to get haircuts. And then after we got a haircut, we could go into the drugstore, which was next door, and buy what we wanted.
By 1942, DMV and state police split into 2 separate agencies. As the department continued to grow, so did the civilian support staff.
$75 a month was my annual salary, and in 6 months, I received a merit increase to $80 a month, $5 raise. Big money.
Kitty Galley was 20 when she started as a records clerk in 1942.
You learned very quickly not to make mistakes because it was very time-consuming and awkward. You had no correction button and no delete button, anything. You had an eraser.
As World War II progressed, men left to fight. The Women's Auxiliary State Police formed to fill the vacancies.
What a great, great life I had with the state police, and I'll always be grateful, and I was blessed to have this opportunity.
Pearl Blevins-Chu was part of the first 26-member all-female WASP unit.
So I had to maintain the car, had to know how to change oil, check the tires, and service it. I was responsible for that car.
Considered unprecedented, they created a media flurry. The female examiners trained, wore uniforms, and were in charge of road tests. Pearl recalls her close calls with inexperienced drivers.
I couldn't pull the brake, so we hit a Piggly Wiggly corner grocery store, and it knocked my hat off and put a knot on my head.
Because everything was rationed during wartime, troopers arrested a number of illegal whiskey carriers.
Somebody suspicious looking, we stopped him, and sometimes we'd catch 1 or 2 cars a night loaded with whiskey.
During this time, it was just as common to come across prisoners of war.
And when I stopped to talk to him, I found out he was an escaped German prisoner from up there at Fort Eustis. And before I left there, I had 3 of them in the car. And when I got home, I found a butcher knife on the back seat of my car on the floor, about 12 inches long.
A black sedan or coach, make, model, and registration unknown.
The customary male voice was also about to change over the airwaves.
They needed dispatchers because the men were going into the war.
Edna Earl Robertson became one of the first females employed as a radio dispatcher.
But there was a lieutenant there, a Lieutenant Troller. He would say, don't let them intimidate you. Just go in there, learn the teletype, do the job, and I know you can do it. And he was right. I was determined then that I was going to do it.
Eventually, she came to be known as the Voice.
They would try to judge what you look like.
Her broadcasts meant she got a few unexpected visits.
One Sunday, this big guy comes walking in and takes a seat in the corner where the sergeants usually sat, and it was Governor Tuck, because he wanted to see me, because he wasn't accustomed to a woman being on the radio either.
For civilians, it was a 6-day work week too. Saturdays were half days, and sometimes finding transportation got a little creative.
I got on that horse and rode up here and tied it up in the front yard to a tree out in front and came in here, worked 4 hours and went back out and rode him home, right down 60.
Did you get any funny looks that day?
I think so.
It would be 14 years from the time the war started before state police was back to full strength. Superintendent Colonel Woodson made appeals to young men between the ages of 21 and 30 to join the force. One of the recruits, a recently discharged military veteran named Hiriam Boone.
Well, that's one of the things that I have enjoyed so much is the variety of duties and work, and there's no 2 cases alike. They're all different, and that's what makes them interesting.
Times had changed, and so did the police cars.
We had a radio, and the handset we used to talk on the radio was like the old-fashioned telephone hung on the dash.
Like the car, the uniform evolved as well.
You had a twin row of bullets in the holster. The gun was a 6-inch revolver, and it swiveled, the holster did, so that when you got in the car it would swivel and you wouldn't have to sit on it.
Firearms training was practiced and improved during quarterly sessions.
And we had to fire the shotgun. At that time, in those days, every trooper was issued a sawed-off shotgun.
By now, aircraft joined the fleet and a landing strip was set up at SPHQ. Blue and gray patrol cars matched the department's uniform colors, and portable weighing stations were set up and manned by state troopers. More changes continued. The triangular shoulder patch was replaced with the embossed seal of the Commonwealth and the words Virginia State Police. The visor cap was retired, and the wide-brimmed Stetson hat was adopted. While the standard red light and siren were part of the car, some troopers had no use for it.
You didn't need it. If I stopped someone, all you had to do then was pull up beside, touch your horn, and motion to them, and they'd pull over.
Troopers were called to work long hours during coal strikes and protests of the 50s. Basic training was now 12 weeks and conducted in a single-story brick building built at headquarters.
When I came on, there were 600 authorized positions on the department.
By the end of the decade, the need for dedicated troopers continued.
The salary of a trooper at that time was about $3,694 annually. So the money was not a factor in coming on the agency.
State police workers were finally given a 5-day work week in 1959. As the 60s approached, highway safety became a serious concern with the introduction of interstate travel and more cars on the road.
Roads provide channels for the lifeblood of modern civilization.
Videos were made to reach the public about traffic safety awareness, the canine and scuba teams formed, and the cross strap was eliminated from the uniform. Armored cars were assigned to each division, and some so-called technologies for the road didn't last very long.
Troopers were issued like a credit card machine. The drivers were issued a plastic card, much like your Visa or MasterCard today, with certain information embossed on it. And the trooper was to use this new machine, which is just like the credit card machine you see today. You would put the summons in that plastic card machine and rake it back and forth. Not popular at all. It didn't survive but several years.
By now, troopers on patrol embraced a simple but favorable advance in technology.
Air conditioning. To get it on a rainy, hot, steamy, rainy day, and we had to wear long sleeves, necktie, and full uniform all the time, and couldn't take a hat off. And to work an accident, to get those people who were in an accident in your car, pouring down rain, perspiration running all over them, and then write it up afterwards. Air conditioning was really welcome.
Social unrest and civil rights protests across the country meant minorities would help change the face of Virginia State Police by the early 70s.
I think me being here encouraged other people to come on, which I was very proud of that.
Sergeant David Green was one of the first African Americans to join the state police. At 20, Green found the biggest hurdles to overcome came on the road pulling violators over.
I used to get stopped by other police departments in my state police car when I would go around and ride around in some of the areas, because they didn't think I was a Virginia State trooper. I am serious.
Despite resistance, for the first time, females would put on the blue and gray uniform.
I never really looked at local police departments. The trooper was the only one that I ever thought about.
Diane Mandeville was just 24 when she took on the challenge in 1978. She was encouraged to keep going by troopers in the department.
I have to owe it for the first 5 years when First Sergeant Dennis Robertson was my supervisor in Prince William County. He gave me the insights of the department, and he allowed me to grow the first couple of years. And if it wasn't for him, I might not have stuck it out.
Mandeville, the third female hired, recalls how women had to adhere to a specific style of haircut.
We had men's haircuts, and if we didn't conform, they made us go to the barber shop down the road here on the Midlothian Turnpike.
As the decades passed, changes in weapons, equipment, safety, and investigations helped to continue to advance the Virginia State Police as an elite law enforcement agency. Just as proud and dedicated are the sworn, so too are the civilian workers.
I only planned to be here a couple months, and I've been here ever since.
Ken Berkeley started in 1947.
That's the reason I didn't put in for a troop. I did not weigh enough, and I wasn't tall enough. It was a regulation then.
After 60 years, he's considered a cornerstone and has a building named after him.
It's a great organization, and everybody looks up to them. And I looked up to them for many years, and I believe in them.
And as we remember our rich history, will never forget those who died while serving and protecting the Commonwealth. And as we wonder what the next 75 years will hold, we turn to our future, the young men and women.
It's an honor to be where I'm at today.
Who will carry on the laws and traditions of the department.
The way I respected the Virginia State Police, I knew it was the organization that I wanted to go with.
It's a feeling that hasn't changed for many, whether it's 30 weeks after joining or decades after their retirement.
Saw the department grow and become the department that's second to none anywhere. And I love it.